Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Lessons Learned. My name is Vincent Beza. I am an author, the founder of Hidden Treasure Novels, the regional representative for the Metro North chapter of the North Carolina Writers Network. And I am so pleased today to be able to introduce to you a friend and a colleague and an author in his own right, John Henry Weiss. John and I worked together in the publishing industry for a number of years, and we had the honor of working together at Apple Computer after that, and saw that transition in the workforce from print to technology. And John's going to share with you some thoughts he has about lessons he's learned along his journey. John is, in addition to being an accomplished author and writer, and being in the technology world and being in corporate America, also a very successful owner of a business, a recruiting business that has helped to place hundreds of well-placed positions and led to his writing of several books that he's going to talk about during the course of this interview. John's photos not up, well, his photos up here on the slide. His videos, he's not able to access videos, so you'll see a little icon of a telephone, and when you see that icon, you'll know that John is talking, and you'll also obviously be able to hear him. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the stage over to John Henry Weiss. And John, if you would share that first lesson and subsequent lessons, that first one being preparing for a lifetime of change. I turn it over to you, John.
Well, thank you very much, Vince, and I want to compliment you on your Hidden Treasure novels. They are absolutely outstanding pieces of writing, and I suggest that everybody follow you and read what you write. Vince, the lesson number one, preparing for a lifetime of change. I think that what we've seen over the last 7 or 8 months drives home very forcefully preparing for a lifetime of change. In January of this year, we had an unemployment rate of 3.5%. In March, that skyrocketed to close to 16%. And now in August and September, it's down to about 8%. So preparing for a lifetime of change is really an important concept, because we get up at 9 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning and we go to work, and we never know what's going to happen at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So preparing for a lifetime of change is something that all of us have to do. But I'm going to quote some statistics during our conversation here, and I want to let our audience know that these statistics are based on my research using the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS.gov, the Bureau of the Census, or the Census Bureau, I should say, and also the Pew Research Center. And these are non-political organizations, and I've found that they tell you what you want to know in no uncertain terms, and they're very good sources for you to use. And one of the things I like from the Bureau of Labor Statistics is the information about our workforce. We have a workforce in America of approximately 150 million people. Now, just think about that for a minute. 150 million people in our workforce. And that number, just that number, 150 million people, that makes our workforce alone the 8th largest country in the world. But things happen in that workforce. For example, approximately 55,000 workers, that's 55000, 55,000 workers are let go from their jobs every day. 99% of them are let go. I use that synonymously with laid off. Only about 1% are fired for cause. And you think it can't happen. Well, let me give you a story about a guy named Bob. He was from Phoenix. And this goes back a few years ago, when about 9 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, I had this very, very tearful call from Bob in Phoenix. And Bob was working as an independent sales rep, and he covered about 3 states. And life was very good. The company that he was working for mainly was a company in Dublin, Ireland, producing math products for K-12. He had a 3-state territory. Life was good, making about $100,000 a year. Time to spend with his family. And one morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning, he had a call from Dublin, Ireland. and it was the president of his company. And he said, Bob, you've done a wonderful job for us, but we're having a reorganization, and your territory has been eliminated. HR will call you later in the day to talk about outplacement. Bob was devastated. He never saw it coming. So this business about, can it happen to me? Yes, it can. It can happen to you. It could happen to you today, as a matter of fact. Hope it doesn't, but it could. So let's take a look at a very, very interesting idea, and it's called the meaning of life. If you go on the internet and Google the meaning of life, you'll get maybe, what, 10,000, 20,000 hits? Plato, Aristotle, contemporary writers. Everybody has something to say about the meaning of life, but I distill it into very few words. My meaning of life is this: we are born, and we die, and in between we work. We are born, we die, and in between we work. And why do we work? To crack glass ceilings, job satisfaction? Nope. We work for money. Sounds greedy, but we work for money in order to buy food, shelter, clothing, things that sustain us one day to the next and make us self-sufficient. So with all of that in mind, and by the way, the ideas that we're talking about today are coming from the books that I've written about careers in the workplace. Now, talking about this business of change, particularly as it's related to the workforce, these changes come about. You could be let go today because of a reorg, a downsizing, mergers, bankruptcy, acquisitions, right-sizing, whatever the term du jour might happen to be. You can go for any particular reason. It doesn't matter what race you are, what gender you are, what religion you are. It makes no difference. It's foolish to think that just because I'm 65, they'll never let me go because that's age discrimination. Or I'm African American, and if they let me go, that is racial discrimination. It doesn't work that way. If the company says you're going to go. It makes no difference. So those are some of the reasons why we have to prepare for this lifetime of change. Now, if we look at our next slide here, lesson number 2, finding your spot in the workplace, and this is where a lot of workers fall down on the job, so to speak. First of all, in order to find your spot in the workplace, I think you have to make a plan. Somebody from Minneapolis once told me, he was a car dealer, as a matter of fact. He says, I tell all of my workers, plan your work, work your plan. Plan your work your plan, and you can't go wrong. So what are some of those things that we have to do to plan our work, to plan our careers? Well, first of all, I think we have to find out who we are. We have to find out who we are, and we have to look at our inner self. We have to find out, what our abilities are, what our aptitudes are, what our interests are. And then after we do that, then we can start matching them with the kind of work that we want to do. And of course, as we said, the primary purpose of work is to make money to survive. But let's have some fun. let's have some interest in the kind of work that we do in order to make money to be self-sufficient. When we're finished with this conversation, just take a couple of minutes with a paper and pencil, if you want to be old-fashioned, or use your pad or whatever technology you have to have 3 columns. And write in one column what your aptitudes are, what your abilities are, and what your interests are. And then take that to the world of work and try to define an industry that coincides with those abilities and interests and aptitudes. Vince, at this point, I'm going to stop for a minute to see if you might have any questions or comments about where we're going.
Well, John, I appreciate the advice you've given so far, and these sessions originally were designed for giving advice to authors, to writers who want to become authors, published authors. Mm-hmm. But you've taken it to a higher level. Your advice is reaching out to all folks, regardless of their station. You're asking them to consider their talents and match their talent to the workplace and lean in and perhaps lean out into a job that they hadn't thought about before. And that's one of the main reasons we have these lesson learn exercises. Some of the folks that are watching this and will be watching it asynchronously Some of them are just leaving high school. Some of them are in college. Some of them are in
Right.
trade school. Some of them are in the military, and they're deciding, what do we do after leaving the military and transitioning over to civilian workforce.
Yes.
So I think, finding your spot in the workplace is not just about an author or a writer finding their spot in the publishing world, but it's about anyone who's trying to find a place in the economic world that we live in. And of course, you kind of alluded to it. We're dealing with the COVID crisis. This pandemic has totally upended all trains of thought, right? And the way we approach business. Not too long ago, we would be doing book signings. We talked about this before the interview started. We would do book signings in a physical location without a mask, without social distancing. And now we have to figure out how do we get the message about our works out to the reading public. So this is one way, an interview on Zoom that can be saved and then spotted out asynchronously on YouTube and shared with other folks. So I really appreciate your taking it to that next level, John, and to sharing with readers and with viewers beyond the writing world. I can advance to the next slide, John, if you're so inclined.
These are good observations, Vince, and these things that we're talking about, they're not only important for the general working public, but they also are important for writers, because take any piece of writing that you can think of, whether it's a novel, whether it's nonfiction. When it comes down to it, regardless of the character in that particular piece of writing, it's going to have something to do with work, because that's what we do between the time we're born and the time we die. It's works of all different kinds. So maybe some of these things will help our potential writers when they get to talking about the characters that they put in their books, or talking about whatever their nonfiction writing might happen to be. Knowing about the workplace, I think is really enlightening, and it opens up a whole new world for writers. But going forward, some of the things that are going to bring about tremendous change in this world, well, it has to do with technology. A lot of people don't believe that, but Vince, you and I have been there with Apple, particularly your long career with Apple, and we know that slogan way back when, changing the world one computer at a time. You might remember that. Everybody laughed, but that was true. Jobs really knew what he was saying. So about finding your spot in the workplace, let's say that we're writers, we're non-writers, we're just plain old workers of every different kind. So what are some of those spots in the workplace? Well, you can work for a large corporation, like Google, like Boeing, like Costco, like Microsoft, whatever it might happen to be. Or you can work for a small business, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics defines that as an employer with less than 500 employees. And by the way, I think the latest number is about 65-70% of all workers in America work for a small business. Sometimes we have the tendency to think that everybody works for a large corporation, but it's not so. Most people work for small businesses, that is, companies under 500 employees. And then we have the option of working as a single entrepreneur, just having your own business, maybe like a consultant. Or you might want to start your own business. Or you might want to be a franchise. Or you might want to work in a government job. And people have a tremendous misunderstanding of what government work is really all about. When people think of government jobs, they're thinking politically. But that's not what the world of work is in government, either at the local, state, and federal level. I'm talking about civil service jobs, which are there regardless of what political party happens to be in power. The largest employer in the world, government jobs. Over 20 million people work in local, state, and federal jobs. And the largest is in the federal job force, 2.5 million people. 2.5 million people have federal jobs. And these federal jobs are not located in Washington, D.C. Only 14% of federal jobs are located in Washington, D.C. The other 86% are scattered throughout the country. And to give you a good perspective on what's involved in federal government jobs, I would suggest to everybody to go to this website, federaljobs.net. Federaljobs.net. It's authored by a man named Dennis Damp, who was working in government service, including military work, for about 30 years. And he's written 26 books, and he has this incredibly informative and successful website called federaljobs.net. So when you're talking about finding your spot in the workplace, there are a lot of places in this workplace where you might be able to find your job. And remember, it doesn't happen to be with the country's second largest employer, which is Walmart, 2.1 million workers. It could be in many different spots. And it doesn't have to be with sitting in an office, or I call them cubicles. The cubicles are also known as people kennels. Terrible working environment. It doesn't have to be there. It could be out working in one of the trades, like a carpenter, electrician, plumber. There's nothing more satisfying for a tradesperson than to drive past $1 million house that he or she helped construct and say, there's some of my creativity. That's what I helped create. Tremendous feeling, many times overlooked. So working with your hands in the trades, gosh, six-figure incomes, your life is your own most of the time. It's a wonderful way to work. So, Vince, with your permission, I'll go on to lesson number 3, rebuilding your persona. Unless you have something to comment on before we go there.
No, John, I really agree with everything you've said so far. And again, for the writers in this group, some of them do write nonfiction, others historical fiction, all different genres, mystery, young adult novels, and so forth. So this next lesson you're about to share with us about building your persona, I think it, from the standpoint of a writer, is recognizing your particular talent, and it might be writing that nonfiction how-to book that's going to help fellow citizens, or it might be a fictionalized account of history that will maybe share some thoughts about what the world might be like or what it could be like. So I'm very interested to hear your thoughts about rebuilding that persona. I think both of us had to rebuild our persona many times over. After I left the publishing industry and moved into technology with Apple Computer and then on to Compaq and several other companies, had to rebuild, who I was in a way, but not all the way back to square one, John. When I was sharing information about the Apple transition from IIe to Macintosh, and I remember being in a school in a technology committee was asking questions, and they asked me point blank, what was I going to sell today? Was I going to sell an Apple IIe or a Macintosh? And I stopped them abruptly and I said, I'm not here to talk about the computer, about plastic and screen silicon. I'm here to talk about FAMPS. And they said, what are you talking about? And I said, I'm here to help you learn about something that will help you do what you're already doing, and that's to find, analyze, manage, present, and share information. You're already doing it as educators. I'm just hopefully providing some tools that'll make that job a little bit easier. And so that rebuilding of the persona, moving away from traditional print material into technology, and then taking that one step further and saying, this is not really about delivery. This is about who I am and who you are as an educator and as a person. So I'm curious to hear your strategy, your lesson for rebuilding the persona.
Well, you're right, Vincent. And what you said about your motivations when you were working with Apple, you went in as a teacher. Your persona was that of a teacher. A teacher is somebody who really wants to help another person accomplish objectives and goals, and you did that very well. So you established your persona as a teacher. One of these side benefits of that persona was that you established credibility with your audience, and they believed in you and they trusted you. And what was the bottom line result from that? They bought some of your products. But you didn't go in saying, boy, I'm really trying to hook these people to buy 1,000 Macs. You went in there to teach something to these people about how this computer that you have in front of you is going to change the world. And it really did. So that's the persona that you had, and your persona was in sync with your character. When you think of persona, there's a symbiotic relationship between persona and character. And we've all met people who have a kind of persona, but when you get down to character, it's much different. And some of this has to do with why people are laid off in the workplace. Take the persona of somebody who's the real good guy, somebody who's always, in quotes, sucking up to the boss, somebody who wants to really do good for the company, and that's their persona. You know, the real solid, I'm going to work for everybody kind of face. But their real motivation might be to get the boss's job, and you never know that. But sometimes that comes out, and that's why sometimes people are laid off for that reason. But the word persona itself has a very interesting origin. It derives from the Latin, where it originally referred to a theatrical mask. And of course, in our world today, we're not on stage, so we want that mask, that persona, to be real. We don't want it to be strictly theatrical. We want it to coincide with your character. And character, I guess we can define that as the aggregate of all of the traits and features that form the real you, your inner core. So going forward, take a few minutes, write down what you believe is your persona, have other people ask, what do you think of me? Who do you think I am? And then write down what you believe are your character traits and make sure that they're in sync. So, Vince, we could talk about persona and character for the next 40 minutes. I know we're not going to do that, but it's something that really helps to give you a new view of who you really are, to get to the real you. So with that, there's one more slide here, and it's about share your experience. Well, what we've been talking about today have derived primarily from my experience. That was working in the corporate world, working as a teacher in high school and middle school in the city of Chicago. And some of those books where I've shared my experience have come from the first book I wrote, Welcome to the Real World, which is a guide for job hunting for recent college grads, followed by Operation Job Search, which was a guide for military veterans entering the civilian workforce, followed by Moving Forward Mid-Career, which is a book that I wrote for people in the mid-career ages, let's say early 30s to late 50s, early 60s. Mid-career now is very difficult to pin down age-wise, but I try to target that middle group because these are the people who have the most to lose by being let go. The reason why, they usually have mortgages on their house, they have car payments, children in college, insurance premiums, and it goes on and on and on. And then the last book on the right, the big book of job hunting hacks. This was a book that was just released by Skyhorse Publishing in August of this year. And it has a number of different hacks or tips about how we deal with this world of work. So with that, Vince, I thank you very much, and I open it up to any questions that you might have.
Well, John, thank you so much. And I'm proud, by the way, to carry all four of those books in the Hidden Treasure Novels virtual bookstore. And I encourage people to read them, read the book that's appropriate for, for their station in life. If you have a child who's a young person who's about to leave college and move into that workplace, certainly Welcome to the Real World would be the right place to start. And ditto for Operation Job Search for those veterans who are trying to transition over to civilian life. And I think my favorite, that Moving Forward in Mid-Career, can't tell you, John, how many times that I've had to live through acquisitions and mergers and spin-off, and it's just part of the everyday world, and it's only accelerating with COVID and with the pandemic we're dealing with. So
you're right.
Really thank you for for putting that information out there. I encourage all the readers to pick up a copy of your book. that's appropriate for them. They are listed, they're featured in the hiddentreasurenovels.com website. They're available on Amazon, and I've read all four, and again, John, I'm thoroughly impressed with what you bring to the table. I will say to viewers, take the time, do the research, find out who you are, what your persona is, how you can affect the workplace, but more importantly, how you affect your own life. And I'm encouraged, John, to realize that I guess at heart, yeah, I'm a teacher. I think you are as well. And I think a lot of the writers who are watching this video, either now live or asynchronously down the road, they're teachers too. They teach every time they publish a book, whether it's a fiction or nonfiction work. By definition, when you write something down, you are sharing a life story, you're sharing a message, and you're being a teacher. So I thank everyone for being on the call. John, I thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Stay tuned for another Lessons Learned episode. Visit us at hiddentreasurenovels.com. If you're an author, if you're a writer, and you would like to share your story, we'd love to hear about you, and we'd like to hear about your story. Thanks, everyone. Have a blessed day, and enjoy life. Thank you.
Thank you very much.